in 2004, I kept having a reoccurring dream about an airplane crashing. And it happened for 3 weeks, night after night, and it made me very nervous because I had planned a big trip through Southeast Asia to backpack through Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And I had just started learning meditation, so I wanted to know what it was like to experience Buddhist countries. On December 26, 2004, my life completely changed. I received a voicemail from my best girlfriend, Julia, and she said there was some big wave that happened in Southeast Asia. It sounds really bad. It doesn't sound like it's a good time to go. The first thing I did was go check the internet, and there on the front page of the New York Times, I saw that the news of the tsunami had struck, and hundreds and thousands of people had been killed. And I discovered that the resort I was scheduled to be on just 3 days later in Koh Phi Phi Island, Charlie's Beach Resort, had been completely wiped out with no living survivors.
Oh man. So when you had these dreams about the plane crash, did you do something differently? Did you change your plans?
During that time, I was vice president of institutional sales, working with hedge funds, and I made a lot of money. It was a very lucrative career. But when the tsunami struck, it felt like a slap in the face. And it made me wonder what I would do with a second chance in life. And I felt that I had been given the second chance. And I think that when we start to ask the universe big questions like that, the universe smacks us with big answers. And a number of synchronistic events happened where I heard about this tiny surf town in Costa Rica called Nosada that is on the Pacific coast. And I heard about it 3 times from 3 separate sources in 1 week.
You were being given a sign, weren't you? And so what happened?
I felt like this was a huge sign from God. And I felt a deep call. I felt like I was meant to go study yoga in Costa Rica. And that same year, my company promoted me to partner and offered to open an office for me in San Francisco. So I grew up in a really poor immigrant family, and we lived below welfare. So making a lot of money and being financially secure was really important to me. And this was a really heart-wrenching decision that I had to make. And during that time, I called my mom, and I told her what was going on and that I was feeling called to travel. And that was my dream that I've always had since I was 15. And I read this book, The Way of the Bull, by Leo Buscaglia, who had sold everything he owned and traveled around Asia. And that was something I had always wanted to do. And she said, just follow your heart and don't look back.
So your heart was calling you to Costa Rica, and your head was calling you to San Francisco. What did you do?
I decided to follow my heart.
Good for you.
And I would say that there was, people often said, oh, Wall Street must have been horrible, and you had to leave that place because, obviously it was really toxic. And I never thought that way. I was more afraid of not listening to that small inner voice. I felt like if I didn't listen to that small inner voice, that something really bad would happen, but I couldn't really quantify, what would happen that would be so bad. It just felt almost horrendous. That's the only way I can describe it. So I took that leap of faith, and I walked away from a $2 million book of business, a job that paid me almost $500,000 a year, and sold everything I had and rented my apartment and just flew to Costa Rica to take a 1-month yoga teacher training program. And with no intentions to be a yoga teacher, but that experience completely transformed my life. And I stopped smoking. I started a daily meditation practice, and I decided to take another leap of faith and travel around the world at that point. So actually, I'd like to start that part over, because I didn't take another leap of faith. I just kept going.
It's
so,
like one continuous
yeah, I was like,
No, that's excellent, though.
Okay, so yeah, I went to the 1-month yoga teacher training program, and it completely transformed my life. I quit smoking. I started a daily meditation practice, and I packed a backpack and a yoga mat and flew one way to Bangkok.
Wow.
And just followed everything that I loved. So that became my guide, was all the things that I was really interested in, all the things that gave me a sense of bliss. I learned Thai massage in Thailand, and I learned about healing and Reiki. I traveled through India and learned yoga and meditation, and I discovered that I love the healing arts, and I fell in love with healing. And I knew that the moment I experienced that would be my path.
Wow. So you were at a very pivotal point in your life. You know, had you chosen the path to San Francisco, you would be a completely different person, wouldn't you? Yeah. Yeah. Was it the right decision?
I believe so, but if I had known now what I knew then, I mean, I think I would have even thought a little harder about, I mean, I think that it's that leap that really takes you in and down so far that you just don't know. I mean, I would say that path opened me up beyond my own imagination of what I ever thought was possible for myself and for other people.
Yeah. I think had you taken the path to San Francisco, it would have been harder to follow your head and your heart at the same time, right? You would have been locked into the career path and everything else. Yeah. Good choice. Good choice. And so now if you look at where you're at now, right, based on the decisions you made, if look at where you're at now, I mean, would you do anything differently?
I think the only thing that I would do differently would be to be more forgiving of myself and other people.
Got it. Got it.
I think that's the only thing, to have loved myself more. Going through that whole process of change and transition was very scary.
Sure.
And I think that it's easy to question yourself when everyone else says, look at that, that's what you want. That's what everybody else wants.
Right.
And to have the courage to follow just a subtle impulse.
Right.
Something very small within that you don't even know what it is.
Well, it's got to be very hard, right, to walk away from the trappings of this world. Everybody wants the $500,000 job, right? Everybody wants all the things that can buy. But, I don't know, did you find it as you were living that life, were you happy?
You know, I was living that life, I would say that I felt empty. When I was living that life, it's like I didn't even know what else there was. But I knew that I wasn't really exercising my potential. I felt like I was living just 20% of who I am. And living life sort of below the radar, so to speak. And I think we all know when we're really exercising the edge of who we are.
Interesting, because I don't know many people in the healing arts that are making $500,000, right? So if you were living that life before and you were 20% of who you could be, and if you flip-flop that now, I mean, how much more are you of who you could be?
How much more am I?
Yeah, by making this switch, you became a lot more whole, right? 80%?
I feel 110%.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
And that, you know, 110% doesn't mean all those external successes, but just an internal feeling of fullness.
That's really cool. That's a very difficult decision to make, and that's a really very strong testimonial of how much more rewarding it can be if you have the heart and the courage to follow it, right? Good job. If you were a younger version of yourself, right, coming to this portal looking for some wisdom, and you had the chance to hear one message from this version of you, what would that message be?
Trust yourself completely. Trust everything that you feel, everything that you receive, and act on what's most true for you in your own heart. and be willing to listen to that over everyone else.
And everyone has an opinion, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are well-intended, but what really matters is what comes from within you.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a guiding force and a guiding intelligence to those subtle inner whispers
Right.
that you have.
Right. But we're not taught to listen to those early in life, are we?
Unfortunately, no. We can't take, classes in kindergarten about it.
Right. Right.
Well, maybe we can now.
It's getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It is getting better. But as I listen to your story, I look for kind of what's the pivot point for you. You were on a path, and then you chose a different path, and it feels to me like the pivot point was the message you got through that dream that you started with, the dream of the plane crashing, and then the reality of the tsunami. Right? That sounded like that really caused you to reevaluate a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think that when death brushes anyone, it's a blessing.
Right.
Because all pettiness, all trivial matters fly out the door, and you focus on what's really important and what's essential.
You bet.
So it's really a blessing.